The crimson neon of the Golden Orchid restaurant cast harsh shadows across Vera Nakamura's gaunt face as she pressed herself against the alley wall. Watching the well-dressed executives laugh and feast through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the stomach cramped with emptiness, but she pushed the sensation aside. This wasn't about her anymore. 3 months. 3 months since the mining accident that took her husband Kenji. And 3 months since little Mika had started showing symptoms of the wasting sickness that plagued the crystalline sector. The medical bills were crushing her. The Stellar Dynamics Corporation had cut off her widow's benefits, claiming Kenji's death was due to operator negligence. Every night, Vera came here to the upscale executive district where the golden towers scraped the artificial sky of New Meridian's biodome. She would wait by the service entrance until closing time, hoping the kitchen staff might have scraps. Anything she could take home to her 7-year-old daughter who grew thinner each day. Please, she had whispered to the head chef yesterday, her pride finally cracking, just the leftovers. My daughter hasn't eaten in 2 days. The Altarian chef had looked at her with those large, multifaceted eyes that betrayed no emotion. Company policy, he'd said in his clicking accent. Surplus food is to be incinerated. Contamination protocols? Vera knew it was a lie. She'd seen the waste containers, overflowing with perfectly good meals while people in the crystalline sector fought over protein-paste rations that never seemed to arrive on schedule. Tonight was different, though. As she huddled in the shadows, watching another evening of corporate excess through the restaurant's windows, she noticed someone watching her back. A human man in a dark security uniform stood across the plaza, his eyes fixed on her location. Vera's heart raced. Had they finally decided to arrest her for loitering? The man approached slowly, his hands visible and empty. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with prematurely gray hair and kind eyes that seemed at odds with his imposing frame. A scar ran along his left temple, disappearing into his hairline. "Ma'am," he said quietly, stopping a respectful distance away. "I'm Marcus Chen, Plaza Security. I've seen you here the past few nights." Vera straightened, preparing to run despite her weakened state. "I'm not causing trouble. I'll leave." "Wait." Marcus held up a hand. "I'm not here to move you along." He glanced around, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're waiting for food, aren't you? For someone at home?" The compassion in his voice nearly broke her. Vera nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a wrapped sandwich and a container of milk. "Brought these from home, but I'm not really hungry tonight." He held them out to her. "Please." Vera stared at the food, then at his face. In 3 months of desperation, only one person had shown her genuine kindness. And he was wearing the uniform of the very corporation that had destroyed her life. "Why?" she whispered, accepting the precious offering with trembling hands. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Because I've got eyes, and I can see what's happening in the outer sectors. Because I've got a daughter, too." He paused, studying her face. "And because standing out here night after night, not for yourself but for someone you love, that takes a kind of courage I respect." As Vera clutched the food to her chest, she noticed Marcus's expression change. His eyes narrowed as he looked past her toward the restaurant, where a group of Stellar Dynamics executives were raising glasses in a toast. "Mrs. Dot," he prompted gently. "Nakamura?" "Vera Nakamura." "Mrs. Nakamura, would you mind if I asked you something? About the food shortages in Crystalline Sector?" Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. There was anger there, carefully controlled, but unmistakable. "What do you want to know?" Marcus glanced around again, then moved even closer. "I want to know if you think they're doing this on purpose." Marcus Chen stared at the classified files glowing on his security terminal, his blood growing colder with each line he read. 3 weeks had passed since his first conversation with Vera Nakamura, and what had started as simple curiosity had become a dangerous obsession with the truth. Project Sustenance, Phase 3 Implementation, the header read. The document detailed systematic food distribution manipulation across New Meridian sectors, with the crystalline district serving as a primary test environment for hunger-based behavioral modification. His hands trembled as he scrolled through. Charts showing caloric reduction schedules, psychological evaluation reports, worst of all, expected mortality rates. Children under 10 were listed as acceptable losses, with percentages calculated to 3 decimal places. A soft chime indicated someone approaching his station. Marcus quickly closed the files and turned to find Director Hawthorne, his immediate superior, standing behind him with an unreadable expression. "Working late again, Chen?" Hawthorne's voice carried a warning undertone.
"Ow."
"Just reviewing patrol." "Reports, sir," Marcus replied, his training keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. Hawthorne moved closer, his pale eyes scanning Marcus's workstation. "Good. Vigilance is important, especially with the recent ... unrest in the outer sectors." He paused meaningfully. "Some of our staff have been asking uncomfortable questions lately. About food distribution, about company policies." Marcus met his gaze directly. "Questions like what, sir?" "The kind that suggest our employees don't trust management decisions. The kind that could be seen as ... seditious." Hawthorne's thin smile held no warmth. "I trust you understand the importance of loyalty, Chen. Your daughter's education voucher comes up for renewal next month." The threat was clear. Marcus nodded slowly. "Of course, sir. Company loyalty is paramount." After Hawthorne left, Marcus sat in the artificial quiet of his security station, weighing his options. He thought of Vera, who continued her nightly vigil, despite growing weaker each time he saw her. He thought of his own daughter, safe in the executive district schools while children in Crystalline Sector collapsed from malnutrition in their classrooms. His decision crystallized when he received an encrypted message on his personal communicator. The sender was anonymous, but the content made his pulse spike. "If you're looking for answers about Project Sustenance, meet me at the old water treatment plant. Sublevel 3. Come alone. You're not the only one who's noticed the patterns." Marcus gathered the copied files he'd been secretly downloading and sealed them in a data crystal. Whatever happened next, he needed insurance. As he prepared to leave his shift, he made one final entry in his patrol log, investigating reports of suspicious activity in abandoned industrial sector. The water treatment plant had been decommissioned 5 years ago when Stellar Dynamics implemented their new efficiency protocols. Now it stood as a rusting monument to corporate cost-cutting, its massive pipes and filtration tanks creating a maze of shadows and echoes. Marcus descended to sublevel 3, his hand resting on his sidearm. The air was thick with moisture and the smell of decay. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly green glow. "You came." The voice emerged from behind a massive pipe junction. A figure stepped into the light, a middle-aged woman with short black hair and intense dark eyes. Her clothing was worn but clean, and she moved with the careful precision of someone accustomed to avoiding detection. "Who are you?" Marcus asked, not moving his hand from his weapon. "Someone who used to work for Stellar Dynamics. Someone who knows exactly what they're doing to those people in Crystalline Sector." She stepped closer, and Marcus could see the exhaustion etched in her features. "My name is Dr. Yuki Tanaka, and I helped design Project Sustenance before I realized what it really was." Marcus felt the world shift around him. "You're the scientist who disappeared 6 months ago? They said you stole company property." Yuki's laugh was bitter. "I stole proof of genocide, if that's what they mean. Been hiding ever since, trying to find someone brave enough to help me expose the truth." Her eyes met his. "Tell me, Mr. Chen, are you that person?" Dr. Yuki Tanaka led Marcus deeper into the abandoned facility, past rusted machinery and pools of stagnant water. Her makeshift laboratory occupied a forgotten maintenance chamber, hidden behind false wall panels and accessible only through a maze of service tunnels. "Welcome to my new office," she said with grim humor, activating emergency lighting that revealed banks of salvaged computers, stacks of hard drives, and walls covered with printed documents and photographs. Not quite what I'm used to after 15 years in corporate research. Marcus studied the evidence covering every surface. Charts showing population decline in targeted sectors, chemical analysis reports, and most damning of all, internal communications between Stellar Dynamics executives discussing population management protocols. "This is insane," he breathed, reading a memo about introducing appetite suppressants into water supplies. They're systematically starving entire communities. Yuki nodded grimly. Project Sustenance has 3 phases. Phase 1 was establishing baseline hunger levels through reduced food distribution. Phase 2 introduced psychological conditioning. People become more compliant when they're constantly fighting starvation. Phase 3. She pulled up a classified document on her main screen. Phase 3 is where it gets truly horrific. The file detailed plans for behavioral modification through controlled nutrition. Specific nutrients would be withheld to create chemical dependencies, while others would be supplemented with compounds that affected brain chemistry. The goal was creating a population that was physically incapable of rebellion. They're not just controlling food, Marcus realized with growing horror. They're engineering human behavior through malnutrition. And it's working, Yuki confirmed. The compliance rates in test sectors have increased by 340% over the past year. Crime is down, productivity is up, and most importantly, from their perspective, political dissent has virtually disappeared. Marcus thought of Vera growing thinner each night but never missing her vigil at the restaurant. How many colonies are they testing this on? 17 that I know of, probably more. New Meridian is just one laboratory in a galaxy-wide experiment. Yuki's fingers flew across her keyboard, bringing up star charts marked with corporate installations. They're building an empire of the starving Marcus. Population's too weak and desperate to resist corporate control. A proximity alarm chimed softly. Yuki's expression sharpened as she checked her security monitors. We have visitors. 3 security vehicles, approaching from different directions. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. They found us. Maybe. Or maybe they're just conducting routine sweeps. Yuki was already transferring files to portable storage devices. Either way, we need to move. I've been preparing for this. She handed him a data crystal containing terabytes of evidence. This contains everything: the research data, executive communications, test results from all 17 colonies, but it's encrypted with quantum keys. Even if they get it, they can't access it without the proper codes. Where are the codes? Marcus asked, pocketing the crystal. In my head, which means we both need to survive long enough to get this information to someone who can act on it. Yuki gathered essential equipment into a compact pack. I have a contact who might help us, a freight pilot who's been asking uncomfortable questions about her cargo manifests. The sound of boots echoing through the facility's upper levels reached them. Yuki led Marcus to a hidden exit that opened into the colony's underground maintenance tunnels. The pilot's name is Zara Okafor, Yuki whispered as they navigated the narrow passages. Operates out of Landing Bay 7. If we can reach her ship. If Marcus caught her arm. What aren't you telling me? Yuki stopped, her expression grave. They've been monitoring my communications for months. There's a good chance this is a trap, that they're using me to identify other sympathizers. She met his eyes. You still have time to walk away, Marcus? Return to your job? Protect your daughter? No one would blame you. Marcus thought of Vera's skeletal frame silhouetted against the restaurant's neon glow, of children collapsing in classrooms while executives feasted on delicacies. My daughter won't have much of a future if we let them continue this. Behind them, searchlights began probing the facility's depths. Yuki smiled grimly. Then we'd better hope Captain Okafor is as principled as she appears to be. Captain Zara Okafor stood in the cargo bay of her freighter, the Wandering Star, staring at the containers she'd been hauling for the past 6 months. The manifest listed them as nutritional supplements bound for outer colony worlds, but something about the shipments had always bothered her. The containers were too heavily shielded for simple vitamins. Stellar Dynamics paid triple rates for their transport with no questions asked. Most freight pilots would have taken the money and stayed quiet. But Zara had learned to trust her instincts during 15 years of running. Cargo through contested space. Her scanner beeped as she passed it over one of the sealed containers. The readings made her blood run cold. Complex chemical compounds that matched nothing in her database of approved food additives. Whatever was in these containers, it wasn't meant to nourish anyone. Captain Okafor, voice from the cargo bay. Entrance made her spin around. 2 figures emerged from the shadows, a man in a security uniform and a woman, who looked like she'd been living rough for months. Landing bays supposed to be secured, Zara said, her hand moving instinctively to the pulse pistol at her hip. How did you get past my locks? We need to talk, the woman said urgently. About what you've been carrying in your cargo hold? The man stepped forward, raising his hands peacefully. My name is Marcus Chen. This is Dr. Yuki Tanaka. We have information about stellar dynamics that you need to hear. Zara's eyes narrowed. She'd heard that name before. Tanaka had been a respected xenobiologist before disappearing under mysterious circumstances. You're supposed to be dead. Not yet. Though they're working on it, Yuki replied grimly. Captain, how much do you know about your cargo? Enough to know it's not what the manifest claims. Zara gestured to the containers. These readings don't match any nutritional supplement I've ever seen. Yuki moved to one of the containers, running her own scanner across its surface. Because they're not supplements. They're behavioral modification compounds designed to alter brain chemistry through food distribution networks. The implications hit Zara like a physical blow. You're saying I've been delivering mind-controlled drugs to colony worlds. 17. Colonies so far, Marcus confirmed, including New Meridian. They're using freight networks like yours to distribute the compounds while maintaining plausible deniability. Zara felt sick. She thought of all the worlds she'd visited, all the people who might have been affected by her deliveries. How many people? Millions, Yuki said quietly. That's just the beginning. This is a test program for galaxy-wide implementation. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the landing bay. Emergency lights bathed everything in pulsing red as automated. Announcements echoed from speakers. Security alert. Unauthorized personnel in Landing Bay 7. All exits sealed. They tracked us here, Marcus said. Checking his weapon, Zara moved to her ship's control panel, her fingers flying over the startup sequence. How long until we can launch? 3 minutes for basic systems, 5 for full power, Yuki replied. Reading the status displays? We might not have 3 minutes, Marcus warned, peering through the bay's observation windows. Security vehicles were converging on their position. Zara made a decision that would change everything. Get those containers. Secured for emergency launch. If we're taking this evidence off-world, we're taking all of it. Captain Yuki said carefully. Once we do this, there's no going back. Stellar dynamics will never stop hunting us. Good, Zara replied, her voice hard with resolve. Because I intend to make sure every freight pilot in the galaxy knows what they've been making us carry. She looked at the containers that had haunted her conscience for months. I've been complicit in this horror long enough. The bay doors began to shake as security forces attempted to override the locking mechanisms. Marcus and Yuki worked frantically to secure the evidence while Zara brought her ship's systems online with desperate efficiency. Engines at 60%, she called out. Where are we headed? Nexus Station, Yuki replied. It's neutral territory, and I have contacts in the Galactic Trade Authority there. Nexus it is. Zara's hands moved across the control panel with practiced precision. Everyone hang on. This is going to be rough. Commissioner Thane Reeves of the Galactic Trade Authority stood before the emergency session of the Colonial Council. The evidence from New Meridian spread across holographic displays that filled the vast chamber. Representatives from dozens of worlds watched in horrified silence as the scope of stellar dynamics conspiracy became clear. Project Sustenance represents the most systematic violation of colonial rights in our recorded history, Thane declared, his voice carrying too. Every corner of the assembly, 17 worlds, over 4 million citizens, subjected to behavioral modification through controlled starvation and chemical manipulation. The data crystal that Marcus Chen and Dr. Yuki Tanaka had risked their lives to preserve contained everything. Executive communications, test results, shipping manifests, and most damning of all, expansion plans that would have brought the program to every human colony within 5 years. The evidence shows clear intent to create a galaxy-wide network of chemically dependent populations. Thane continued, highlighting corporate communications on the main display. Stellar Dynamics wasn't just testing hunger as a control mechanism. They were preparing to franchise it. A representative from the Centauri colonies stood, her face pale with shock. Commissioner, our recent food distribution problems, the unexplained compliance changes in our outer settlements, all part of their beta testing program, Thane confirmed grimly. Captain Okafor's shipping logs show regular deliveries to Centauri space over the past 18 months. The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives realized their own worlds had been targeted. Thane let the outrage build before calling for order. The immediate response is clear, he announced. Stellar Dynamics Corporation is hereby dissolved, its assets frozen, and its executives subject to arrest warrants across all colonial territories. But our real work begins now with recovery and accountability. On New Meridian, Vera Nakamura stood in the morning sunlight outside the Golden Orchid restaurant, but this time she wasn't begging for scraps. The restaurant had been converted into a community feeding center, its doors open to everyone regardless of sector or status. Her daughter Mika, finally receiving proper nutrition and medical care, laid with other children in the small garden they'd planted where the executive parking lot used to be. Marcus Chen, now heading the colony's transitional security force, approached with a smile. The last of the corporate administrators left this morning, he reported. The new civilian government should be fully operational within the week. And Dr. Tanaka? Era asked, watching her daughter laugh for the first time in months. Testifying at another colony tribunal. They want her expertise to help identify affected populations galaxy-wide. Marcus paused, his expression serious. Vera, they're planning a memorial for the people who died during the project. They want to name it after you, for the courage you showed standing out here night after night. Vera shook her head. I wasn't being courageous. I was just being a mother. Sometimes they're the same thing, Marcus replied quietly. Across the galaxy, Captain Zara Okafor transmitted the final shipping records to colonial authorities while her freight network organized the largest humanitarian aid convoy in galactic history. The containers that had once carried chemical compounds now transported medical supplies and real food to the affected worlds. Dr. Yuki Tanaka worked 18-hour days, developing treatment protocols for the millions affected by behavioral modification. Her research would eventually lead to a complete reversal of the chemical dependencies. But more importantly, it would establish safeguards to prevent such atrocities from ever happening again. Commissioner Thane Reeves stood on the observation deck of Nexus Station, watching ships depart for the recovering colonies. The corporate executives responsible for project sustenance would face justice. The affected populations would heal, and new regulations would protect future generations. But he knew the real victory belonged to people like Vera Nakamura, who had stood outside that restaurant night after night, not for herself, but for her child. Her silent vigil had become a symbol of resistance that would inspire others to speak out against injustice wherever they found it. The dawn was breaking across the galaxy, and for the first time in years, it carried hope instead of hunger.